What's a secret you can only share with online strangers? Story 1. Due to the current pandemic, my best friend of over 10 years lost his job. He was already going through tough times. His wife cheated on him, left him, and they went through a terrible divorce. Now, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed and can be forgetful. However, he's a very proud man and refuses help from anyone, no matter the situation. That's just how he is, and nothing I do can change that. This part is important. One evening while we were having a few beers, he mentioned how worried he was about making rent next month. Since I have decent savings and a stable job, I offered to help him, but he immediately refused, saying he could never accept such a thing. I happen to know his landlord as a vague acquaintance. We've chatted a few times when I've been at my buddy's place. So when my friend was at another friend's house working on his old dirt bike, I went to see the landlord. I paid his rent in full, in cash for the next 2 months. I made the landlord promise never to tell him it came from me, and suggested he say the money was owed to him due to an overpayment in rent calculations from the last few years. This way, it seemed legitimate, and my friend would believe it. It worked. The next weekend, he was overjoyed, telling me all about the accounting error that saved him. He said without that refund, he might have ended up homeless. He truly believes it was a random stroke of luck. But for me, knowing I helped him in such a meaningful way, even if he'll never know it came from me, made it all worth it. Story 2. When I was 17, I was hit by a car. Sometimes I wish the accident had caused visible injuries, something broken or obvious. The car hit me side on at 30 miles per hour. I flipped over the hood, hit my head on a metal railing, and then landed on the ground. At the hospital, they glued my head back together, took a quick look under my shirt, and said I'd only bruised my spine. A year later, I was still in pain, so a doctor referred me to physical therapy. That's when I was told I have a tilted pelvis. Multiple doctors, physiotherapists, and even a chiropractor agreed. It's visible when I stand up straight, and one leg is slightly longer than the other. But every time I go to a doctor, I'm told I'm too young for constant pain, or that it can't possibly be a serious issue. One doctor even blamed me for my condition, saying it was my fault because I didn't swim 6 times a week. If that accident had left me in a wheelchair, I know I'd still be in pain. It would be awful, but at least people would take me seriously, and I'd get the help I need. Story 3. 4 years ago, my dad had 2 massive strokes. He was hospitalized and underwent a year of intensive physical and psychological rehabilitation. Unfortunately, a large part of his brain was damaged, leaving him with the mental capacity of a 5-year-old. Despite this, I loved him deeply and visited him as often as I could at the rehabilitation clinic he was placed in. Each visit was tough. He wasn't the same person anymore. Most days he was fixated on eating candy or feeling upset about not having things he thought he needed, like a new watch. One day the clinic staff called me, asking if I could pick up some prescription pills because their pharmacy delivery hadn't arrived. I had an important meeting in an hour, but I rushed to get the pills and delivered them to the clinic. When I arrived, they asked if I wanted to see him. I can't, I said. I don't have the time right now. I'll talk to him tomorrow when I visit. I think he might have seen me from his window as I drove away. That night, he passed away. To this day, I blame myself for not taking 5 minutes to talk to him. I was stressed and thought it would just be another random conversation about something trivial. I don't know if seeing me leave made him give up. I'd do anything to have him back, even for just one more moment. I've never told my mom or sister about this. I know it would break their hearts. Story 4. 2 years ago, when I was 23, I lived with 3 roommates. One night, I got incredibly wasted at a party, but one of my roommates was in far worse condition than I was. Around 3 a.m., I practically carried her home and tried to get her into bed safely so she could wake up the next day with just a massive hangover. I did everything they recommend, turned her on her side with a pillow behind her so she wouldn't roll onto her back, placed a bucket and a glass of water within arm's reach, spread a towel on the bed in case she threw up. But just as I was about to go to bed myself, she did something I've only ever told her about. Under the covers, she pulled down her pants, mumbled something about needing to go to the bathroom, and then proceeded to take a huge dump in her bed. Afterward, she rolled onto the floor and passed out. I had no idea what to do. Panicking, I decided that if no one else found out, it didn't have to turn into a big deal. I grabbed a plastic bag, scooped up the 2 massive logs, seriously, they were enormous, tossed the sheets in a garbage bag, threw it all in the outdoor trash can, and replaced her bed with fresh sheets. Then I put a pillow under her head and left. For the entire week, I took care of all the garbage and recycling, just to make sure no one discovered it. The next morning, I told her what happened, but I haven't told anyone else. Every time I think about it, I cringe and laugh because it's a hilarious story. but I can't share it without exposing her identity. Story 5. I sometimes look at pictures of horrific crime scenes to ground myself and remind myself of how fortunate I am not to experience that side of humanity in person. It's not because I enjoy gore, I don't. In fact, every time I see these images, I get a lump in my throat. But they put things into perspective for me. They make me realize how good my life is compared to those who face such tragedy. These pictures also remind me of how fragile the human body is. It's unsettling how easily someone's life can end. A simple accident, and years of memories, experiences, and relationships are gone. What's left is just a lifeless shell. I don't share this habit with anyone because I know they'd see me differently. They'd probably think I'm some kind of serial killer. But to me, it's just a sobering reminder to be grateful for what I have. Story 6. I never graduated from college. Instead, I paid $200 for a fake degree and had it sent to my parents' house. They believed it completely. I lied to my girlfriend at the time and to all my friends as well. By then, I was already in my 5th year of college and still had about 1.5 years left to finish. I had messed around too much, failing classes and piling up D's and F's. Eventually, I just couldn't handle it anymore, so I never went back. I told my parents I was too embarrassed to attend the graduation ceremony because I was a 5th-year student and all my friends had already graduated. They bought the story. The lie still weighs heavily on me. When people talk about college, I usually just say I went to college, but I avoid talking about graduation. If someone directly asks what year I graduated, I lie as a last resort. Looking back, I wish I had put in the effort to graduate with my friends and see my parents cheer as I walked across the stage. If I could go back, I'd do everything differently and finish the degree. That said, going back to college now isn't worth it. I run my own business and make a 6-figure salary. Before that, I climbed the corporate ladder. Ironically, the fear of being exposed as a college failure pushed me to work harder and succeed. I feel like this lie motivated me to bury my failure under enough success that no one would dare question me about college. Still, I can't help but wonder what my life would have been like if I had just finished that degree. Story 7. When I was in 7th grade, I always had a side hustle to make money. I sold snacks like beef jerky and what I called white girl trail mix, which was a mix of off-brand cereal and Chex Mix packed in plastic baggies. I'd sell these to classmates for pocket money. Around the same time, I got really into the idea of pheromone cologne. I believed it could increase my chances of being attractive to girls based on all sorts of questionable information I found online. When I couldn't find a way to buy pheromones directly, I decided to make my own. I read that sweat contains pheromones and that the most effective ones supposedly come from the genital area. Total hearsay, but I was convinced at the time. This led to my plan. I bought 6 bottles of aftershave and started collecting what I thought were pheromone samples. To do this, I rubber banded a Ziploc bag around my genitals and wore it during the day. I'd dress in the warmest pants I had, exercise in them, and do whatever I could to sweat as much as possible. Then I transferred the collected sweat into an empty water bottle. After gathering what I thought was enough, I mixed the sweat into the aftershave bottles, thinking I had created a pheromone-enhanced cologne. To test it, I decided to spread it around. I gave or sold most of the bottles to my classmates and friends, keeping only one for myself. Looking back, my secret is that people at my school unknowingly wore cologne laced with my sweat. In the end, it didn't work. No one became more attracted to me, and eventually I learned how to interact with women like a normal human being. Still, it's a story that makes me cringe every time I think about it. Story 8. My mom was my hero. She was the strongest, kindest person I've ever known, and watching her die in hospice over the course of 5 days was nothing short of torture, for her and for us. She died from dehydration, which might sound benign to someone who hasn't witnessed it firsthand. But the reality is brutal and horrific. Unless you've experienced true, prolonged thirst, you can't imagine the kind of suffering it inflicts. Dehydration was the least horrible option available given the circumstances. That's the tragedy of it all. Our society clings to the notion that prolonging life at all costs is virtuous, even when it subjects people to unnecessary agony. We deny them the right to die with dignity and peace. I'm a physician. I've sworn an oath to do no harm. But sitting by her bedside, helpless as she endured this slow, painful process, was the hardest thing I've ever faced. She was surrounded by her family, which I know is how she'd want to go, but that doesn't erase the suffering she endured. Her body shut down over 5 long days. her blood becoming so thick from dehydration that her heart couldn't beat it anymore. I wanted so badly to give her an overdose of pain medication, to let her slip away peacefully and end her suffering. But I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to cross that line, even though it felt like the compassionate thing to do. Hospice provided some sedatives, but they don't monitor vital signs or fully address the pain someone might be feeling in their final moments. It's impossible to know how much she was suffering, but I still hear her labored breathing in my mind. My mom was an incredible woman. She endured 2 days of labor to bring me into this world as a 10-pound baby. She raised a big family and taught me to tackle life's impossible challenges with strength and purpose. She was supposed to pass in a day, but she held on for 5, fighting even when her body was failing her. The part that haunts me the most is how much I've changed since then. For the first 40 years of my life, I was known for my drive to improve the world around me, a quality I learned from her. But now I feel deflated. The suffering she endured broke something in me. I know I should be fighting to change the way we handle end-of-life care, but I don't even know where to start. The political and ethical debates are overwhelming, and I feel like a coward for not trying. My confession is that I wish I'd acted in the moment. I wish I'd given her the peace she deserved, even if it meant going against everything I've been taught. As horrible as that decision might have felt, it would have been easier to live with than the memory of her half-conscious suffering, gasping for peace over those 5 endless days. Story 9. I recently discovered a family secret, and I have no one I can talk to about it, so here it goes. A few years ago, my grandmother, on my dad's side, moved to Spain. I didn't think much of it at the time, but recently I learned that a man had created a Facebook account just to message both my dad and my uncle. He told them he was their half-brother and that my grandmother had put him up for adoption decades ago. My dad is 43, and my uncle is a few years older, so this would have happened long before either of them knew. When they confronted my grandmother about it, she lost it. She demanded that they stop speaking to this man, or she would cut them out of her life entirely. Not long after that, she moved to Spain. Now I know there's a chance I have more family out there, but I'll probably never know them. I can't ask my grandmother because she'll react the same way. I can't bring it up with my dad or uncle either because they've clearly been forced into silence. On top of that, I don't even have the man's name, so there's no way for me to track him down. To make things worse, I barely know anyone on my dad's side of the family. There was a huge family argument years ago, and my grandmother cut everyone off. She made it clear that if my dad or uncle ever reached out to those family members again, she would cut them off too. So now I'm left with this secret. I might have another branch of family out there, but I'll never know for sure unless decades pass and my grandmother's no longer here. Only then might I get some answers, but until then, I just have to live with this mystery. Story 10. I sued my boss and ended up forcing him to sell his business, all because his wife made my working life unbearable. She wasn't even at the club most of the time, but she'd call in with absurd demands. One day she phoned the bouncers to tell me I wasn't allowed to wear mismatched socks on stage. Mismatched socks. For years I endured all kinds of nonsense from her because being on stage was my time. I could express myself within the law, and mismatched socks were my small rebellion. But her micromanaging didn't stop there. She kept adding new rules, often with fines attached. Chewing gum, $20 fine. Late, another $20. Wear something inappropriate on the floor with customers? $20. Leave a water bottle in the fridge overnight? $20. If she didn't like your attitude and you stood up for yourself? Another $20. I'd had enough. One day I snapped and called a lawyer. I documented everything, every ridiculous rule, every fine, and every sign she put up to enforce them. I had a mountain of evidence. The club owner, her husband, tried everything to avoid the lawsuit. He dodged the process server, filed baseless motions, and even claimed his dad owned the bar. He sold the club and tried to destroy evidence by getting rid of the computers. Nothing worked. Eventually, we went to mediation. His dad even showed up wearing a minister's collar, clearly as a last-ditch attempt to gain sympathy. It didn't work. He settled for $450,000. Most of the money went to my lawyer, and the rest was split among the dancers who joined the suit. I didn't walk away with hundreds of thousands, but I paid off some old debts and felt immense satisfaction knowing I stood up for myself and won. While I wish I could have sued just her, I'm glad I was able to make them face the consequences. Story 11. There's another guy here with a similar story, and I can relate. Life barely feels worth living. I have no goals, no motivation, and no real joy. I'm almost finished with my master's degree in computer science, but I can't bring myself to work on the last research project I need to start my thesis. My bachelor's thesis was already a nightmare. I hate research. My supervisor has been on vacation for 4 weeks, and I haven't done a thing in that time. Now I'm scrambling to whip up something that looks like I put effort into it. He's back on Thursday, and I'm just hoping he'll consider the project done and let me pass. Then it'll be another 6 months of procrastinating on my thesis. Looking back, I regret continuing after my bachelor's degree. There's little benefit to having a master's in this field, especially since I didn't specialize in anything. I should have just started working. Now I'm stuck. Too far along to quit, but dreading every step forward. At least I'm in Germany, so university is cheap and I'm not in debt. But beyond school, my life feels empty. My only hobby is playing video games, and even that has lost its appeal. I rarely find games I enjoy anymore, and when I do, I lose interest within minutes. Other than gaming, I go on pointless walks by myself to pass the time. I don't have hobbies to talk about or share with anyone, so I barely socialize. I recently started looking for a boyfriend on dating apps. I'm a closeted homo, which adds to the pile of stress. But it's hard to connect with people when your life feels this uninspired. No one needs this much negativity in their life. I have an appointment with my university's psychological counseling on Friday, but I don't think it'll help. This has been going on for years, and I feel like there's no way to fix it. I don't know what to do anymore. Story 12. I was an escort for 5 years, from the age of 15 to 20. Many of my clients were the boyfriends or fathers of friends. Some even paid me to have S in their homes while their partners or children were asleep. They all found my ads on sites like Backpage or Craigslist. I stopped escorting after one particularly awkward experience. A client paid me $500 for a session, and afterward I went straight to my regular waiter job. To my shock, the client walked in with his entire family. I had to serve their table like nothing had happened, but every time I asked for his order or drink, he looked absolutely devastated, as if he couldn't believe I worked there and that we were face to face just an hour after our session. His wife had to snap at him multiple times to get his attention every time I approached the table. The next day, he texted me to apologize for gawking. I didn't know he had a wife or kids, let alone kids my age. At the time, I didn't care much because of my price rate, but his face stuck with me. Every client after that brought his face to mind until the session got going. Not long after, a close friend accused me of being too close to her dad after catching us in what she described as a longing embrace and seeing me with a wad of cash in my hand. I lied and told her he'd lent me money as a father figure, and I got excited and hugged him. Luckily, she was a few moments too late to see what had actually happened. She later told her mom, and I wasn't allowed at their house anymore. She explained it was because her dad had a gambling problem and was too nice, but we both knew there was more to it. The final straw was when my sister's boyfriend tried to pay me for a happy ending after I agreed to give him a massage. I couldn't go through with it and left without taking the money. That moment made me feel so dirty and ashamed that I quit escorting for good. The world is too small for that life, and I still feel hollow when I think about it. Story 13. I was fired because my employer got wind of some inappropriate behavior in the office that made me uncomfortable. It wasn't bad enough for me to say anything or even consider suing, but I confided in a friend. That friend went straight to my boss, and everything spiraled from there. I was called in and fed a long, rambling explanation about why the company had to part ways with me. They offered severance pay, but only if I signed a non-disclosure agreement. Hidden in that agreement was a clause stating I couldn't sue them for sexual harassment. I wasn't planning to sue, but the company apparently fired me because they were worried I might. To make things worse, they've since told people I was let go due to abusing drugs and alcohol, which is a complete lie. Now that's the story everyone believes, that I was fired for substance abuse, even though the real reason was their fear of a harassment lawsuit. Looking back, I wish I'd refused the severance, not signed the NDA, and sued them for the harassment. At the time, I just wanted to move on, but knowing what I know now, I would have handled it differently. Instead, I'm stuck with a false reputation and the regret of not standing up for myself. Story 14. My mom passed away from breast cancer 6 years ago. After she died, my dad began drinking heavily. He was never a great father before, but he became much worse. On nights when he came home drunk, I would hide my younger sister under her bed and take the beatings myself to keep her safe. One night I stayed out late with friends and lost track of time. When I finally got home, I saw cop cars and an ambulance outside. A police officer took me to the station where I was told that my dad, in a drunken rage, had beaten my sister until she was unconscious. She died a few hours later in the hospital. I testified against my dad in court, and he was sent to prison. Now I'm in college, but but I've never told anyone about what happened. Not even my best friend. I'm too ashamed. I feel like it's my fault. If I had been home that night, my sister might still be alive. I've been seeing a therapist for years, and while it has helped, I still feel a constant weight of guilt and sadness. I'm trying to move forward, but some days it feels impossible. Story 15. I live a double life. To friends and family, I'm a respectful, upstanding white-collar professional. But for nearly a decade, I've been a low-key man whore. I've had a handful of proper, long-term girlfriends, but I've had Sewell experiences with many more women, probably 10 to 20 times that number across the world. It started in my mid to late 20s when I had a job that allowed me to travel internationally, often to poorer countries where foreigners were treated like celebrities. I was an average-looking guy with decent social skills, but in some places, I had women throwing themselves at me. At first, it was thrilling. Staying in fancy hotels paid for by my company, I'd meet local women who knew I'd only be around for a few weeks. It was easy to connect, hang out, and eventually hook up. But after a while, I noticed the hurt feelings and the toll it took on others, and I started feeling like an asshole. Eventually, I began frequenting bars and karaoke clubs in Asia, where women were paid to keep men company. I developed connections with some of these women and ended up sleeping with them, usually without paying directly for S. This inflated my ego even more, but even that grew tiresome. So I began hiring prostitutes. At first, I was ashamed, but I realized how quick and efficient it was. There were no emotional attachments or hurt feelings involved. Some encounters were terrible. Others were amazing, both sexually and socially. The thrill wasn't just in the S, but in the attention, admiration, and ego boost that came with it. When I traveled to places like Thailand and the Philippines, everything reached a new level. There, prostitution is widely accepted in certain areas, and I found myself living out wild fantasies I never thought possible. The experience was intoxicating, partying, meeting new people, and being surrounded by beautiful women. Now, nearly a decade later, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on this lifestyle. I've been lucky enough to avoid STDs, but I've also realized how much it's affected my perspective on relationships and intimacy. Regular S feels boring in comparison, and I worry that I'll never find the same level of excitement in a normal relationship. I still keep in touch with some of the women I met, many of whom have moved on from that phase of their lives. I've largely stepped away from that lifestyle, but if I ever return to those places, I know I'll be tempted to dip my toes back in. It wasn't just the S, it was the attention, the admiration, and the escape from my regular life. It's a side of me I'll always keep hidden beneath my respectable exterior. Story 16. I shower daily, take Epsom salt sitz baths, always wear clean underwear, use hypoallergenic laundry detergent, and have even stopped shaving. I stay fairly active, eat healthy, and have tested negative for STDs multiple times, yet almost every month, I deal with genital boils, usually on my inner labia. These boils are excruciating. The pain can keep me up at night, make walking or wiping unbearable, and disrupt my ability to do basic, everyday things. I've seen 3 different doctors, a dermatologist, and 2 gynecologists. I've been tested for STDs, including herpes, 3 times, with both blood tests and swabs. One doctor thought I might have hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, but that was ruled out. The consensus among the doctors, I'm prone to boils. Really? Prone to boils on a mucous membrane? I know it's possible for people to get boils on the vulva or buttocks, but the inner labia? It feels so unusual and frustrating. I eventually had to tell my boyfriend, because it was getting impossible to explain why I couldn't have S or physical contact for weeks at a time. He was understandably grossed out, and that reaction only added to my frustration. I feel like I'm being punished for something. No matter how clean I keep myself or how much effort I put into managing my health, this keeps happening. It's hard not to feel dirty, even though I know I'm not. Story 17. This time last year, I was recovering from being in the hospital, where I was on life support for over 23 days. What started as a trip to the ER for a foot infection and a fever turned into an unimaginable nightmare. I don't remember much. I went to the ICU, had a few friends visit, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up from a coma. It turns out I had become septic, which led to respiratory distress, heart failure, and kidney failure. My chances of survival were slim. At one point, I told the doctors to just let me die. I'd been through so much in life already and felt like I couldn't keep fighting. My sister and I even had a pact that neither of us wanted to be on life support. But she didn't honor that promise, and honestly, I'm glad she didn't. When they were preparing to give me a tracheotomy, someone reminded me of my granddaughter. My son and his wife had a baby girl a few months earlier. and that thought was enough to make me fight. Now, a year later, I'm still struggling. I told my son repeatedly before all this that I wouldn't be around much longer, and part of me still feels that way. Despite surviving, I can't shake the feelings of hopelessness. Story 18. My entire life is controlled by fear. I get out of bed because I'm scared of what will happen if I don't. I eat because I'm scared of the pain that comes with hunger or neglecting my body. Every action I take is motivated by fear. I feel completely numb, like I'm on autopilot. My body moves through life, doing what it's supposed to, while my mind spirals with insecurities and anxieties. I don't feel connected to myself anymore. It's as if my body is just a vessel and I'm a brain trapped inside it. I have no purpose. I have no one to love. And when I do meet someone, I ruin it. I either scare them away by being too clingy because I'm afraid they'll leave, or I push them away because I'm afraid of hurting them. The only time I feel peace is when I'm asleep. Sleep is blissful. It's the only time the spiral stops. But I stay up late because I know that when I wake up, a new day will start, and I'll have responsibilities again. I wish I could curl up in a dark room and sleep forever. Everything feels like suffering, physically and emotionally. I just want something to change. Story 19. I'm a guy, and my deepest, darkest secret is about my college roommate and best friend. During college, we somehow ended up in a secret Sewell relationship, even though we weren't boyfriends or in any kind of defined relationship. It wasn't something we talked about openly, but it went on for years. Eventually, he moved across the country, and our dynamic shifted into occasional sting and phone S. This continued even as he started dating and later married his now wife. About 2 months after his wedding, he stead me again, and it's been an on and off thing ever since. The thing is, I'm still not over him. It's strange to say because we never officially dated, but I definitely developed feelings for him. And despite knowing how wrong this is, I always give in. Every time it happens, I hate myself a little more and feel so confused. I can't stop wondering, what does he still want with me? I didn't attend his wedding because of COVID, so I've never met his wife. But the whole situation eats away at me. It's like a wound that keeps reopening every time he reaches out. I don't know how to move on, and it's killing me bit by bit. Story 20. My drug use might have led to the death of my cat. I was too messed up to notice that she wasn't eating or drinking. I just get high, glance at her food bowl, think food's on the plate, and go about my day. I don't even know when I finally realized something was wrong. One day it just hit me, an epiphany that my cat wasn't well. I rushed her to the vet and they told me her liver was failing. They gave me medicine to give her, and I had to force it down her throat while she clawed and scratched me. I cried ugly, heartbreaking tears the entire time. The next day I went to work, leaving her on the couch. When I came home, she hadn't moved and had urinated on herself in the couch. She was making these strange, horrible, warbling meows. I cleaned her up as gently as I could and took her back to the vet. I held her in my arms, kissed her, and tried to comfort her while we waited. But when we got into the exam room and the vet asked me to place her on the table, I realized she was cold and still. She had died in my arms. I broke down. The vet tried to comfort me, but I was inconsolable. The guilt eats away at me every day. If I had been more present, if I had noticed sooner, she might still be alive. Instead, I was too high to realize she needed help. I miss her so much and will always carry the regret of not being there for her when she needed me most. Story 21. Sometimes I don't see the point in living anymore. I'm a 39-year-old guy living with my 65-year-old mother, who has a heart condition and diabetes. She can't even pull her pants up or get off the toilet without my help, and I've had to help her out of the bathtub more times than I can count. We argue constantly, but I'm terrified of losing her. My dad died when I was 14, and it's been just me, my mom, and her drunk boyfriend ever since. He was abusive when I was younger, but now he's just an annoying, mouthy jerk. I work a dead-end job that I feel completely stuck in, and I can't remember the last time I was in a meaningful relationship. I've tried everything to find a girlfriend, but it always falls apart. Ironically, I've helped others find love and happiness, yet I'm always the one left alone. I've had suicidal thoughts more times than I care to admit, but I don't have the courage to go through with it. The thought of my nieces and nephew having to hear why their uncle isn't around anymore stops me. I can't do that to them. I'm still here, trying my best, even when it feels like there's no hope. I have a few close friends who mean the world to me, and maybe one day I'll find someone who makes all of this worth it. Until then, I'll keep holding on, one day at a time. Story 22. I'm writing a novel where the antagonist is white and his best friend and body man is black. They've been best friends for over 20 years, having played basketball together in high school and college. The black friend does everything he can to keep the antagonist out of trouble and on the straight and narrow. Most of the time, he succeeds, but he inevitably fails during critical moments. When asked why he remains loyal to someone who constantly makes bad choices, his response is, "Because we're best friends, and you don't walk away from your best friend whenever there's a speed bump." That loyalty is central to their relationship and drives much of the story. It's just how I envisioned the characters from the start. I'm currently on the second draft, and my editor and several friends have been very encouraging about it. But deep down, I'm afraid that as soon as it's published, people will call me a racist because, of course, the black guy's in a secondary servitude role. The fear of backlash has been so paralyzing that it makes me want to give up on the project entirely, even though I love the story and believe in it. Story 23. I absolutely hate myself right now. I've always felt like I'm not really in control of my own life and needed a break to figure things out. Then the pandemic hit, and at first I stayed home because of the lockdown. Then it was summer vacation, and I kept staying home out of caution. I ended up spending half a year at home, doing absolutely nothing productive. I didn't pick up any hobbies or make any progress figuring out what I want to do with my life. I don't even know which college I want to apply to. Instead, I wasted my days scrolling on my phone or reading. It was the perfect opportunity to do something meaningful for once, but I completely blew it. School starts again in 2 weeks, and I can't even think about it without being reminded of how much time I wasted. All I do now is beat myself up for being such a failure. Story 24. I'm 13, and I'm terrified of losing my grandfather. He's my only living grandparent, and I love him with all my heart. He constantly encourages me to be strong, independent, and self-reliant, and I admire him so much for the life he's lived and the wisdom he shared with me. My grandmother on his side passed away when I was only 4, and my other grandparents on my mom's side passed away when I was 3 to 6 years old. I wasn't very close to them, but I'm sure I would have been if I'd had more time with them. I can't imagine how I'll cope when my grandfather passes. He's been through so much in his life. Born during the silent generation, he grew up with an absent father and a house full of siblings. He once traveled from Revere, Massachusetts to Baltimore, Maryland to meet his father, only to find out he died just 4 days before his arrival. He had a secret relationship with my grandmother as a teen because her parents wouldn't accept him until he found a job. Together, they raised 5 children, with him working 2 jobs and 20-hour shifts while still being present for his family. He supported his kids through thick and thin, even raising one of my cousin's daughters temporarily when things got tough. Even after losing his wife of over 70 years, he found the courage to date again and is now a grandfather to me and 12 other cousins, as well as a great-grandfather to 6 or 8 second cousins. He's lived such an incredible life, and I'm in awe of all he's achieved and overcome. I try not to let my fear of losing him overshadow our time together, but it's hard. I don't want to be completely devastated when the time comes. I want to focus on the amazing life he's lived and the love he's given to all of us. Story 25. My grandmother had a cat, and I became incredibly close to him, though no one in my family really knew or seemed to care. My parents didn't realize how much he meant to me, but my grandmother knew, and we had even talked about me taking him when I moved out. He passed away during my last Christmas break. I was the one holding him when he died, watching the life leave his eyes. Afterward, I gave him to my grandmother, and my grandfather told me to put him in a trash bag. I have no idea what happened to him after that. My family believes it was my grandmother holding him when he passed, and I've never corrected them. It feels like it would be crossing a line to admit it was me, especially since he was her cat. But the truth is, I loved him deeply. What hurts the most is how little anyone else seemed to care. He didn't get the kind of funeral our family dogs received, nor was he buried in the family pet graveyard. It feels like he was dismissed as unimportant, and that's a pain I can't seem to shake. I still dream about him, sometimes even seeing him walking around as if he's still alive. It's like he's haunting me, not in a scary way, but as a constant reminder of how much I miss him. No one else seems to understand, though. To them, he was just a cat or even a bit of a jerk. I want to stop missing him and move on, but I can't. I feel stuck in grief, unable to talk to anyone about how much he meant to me. I don't know how to get help or find closure when no one else seems to care. Story 26. Over the last 2 or 3 years, my S-drive has taken a significant hit, and it's causing a strain in my relationship. I don't know exactly what happened. I can still get erect, and I find many different women of various body types attractive. I just don't have the drive to want S anymore. I don't have insurance, so seeing a doctor would devastate me financially. But I suspect it's connected to my chronic pain and fatigue, which are also undiagnosed for the same reason. I experience joint pain that can leave me bedridden at times, and it never really goes away. I'm constantly exhausted, often so tired that I can and have slept entire days away. The only reason I get up some days is because my girlfriend forces me out of bed. I'm always in a miserable mood because of the pain, though I do my best to mask it. I know my lack of interest in S hurts my girlfriend's feelings, and that breaks my heart. She's the only person I want to be with when I actually feel up to it, but it's hard to focus on intimacy when the pain and fatigue are so overwhelming. The more I think about it, the more it feels like I'm not just being worn down by my health issues, but also by the American healthcare system. The inability to afford proper care and treatment is its own kind of exhaustion, an endless cycle of suffering with no resolution in sight. I don't know what to do. I love my girlfriend, and I hate that my condition is causing this rift between us. But until I can address the underlying issues, I feel stuck, trapped in a body that refuses to cooperate and a system that continues to let me down. Story 27. I feel like I made all the smart choices in life, but looking back, they might have been the dumbest things I could have done. The way I think and the way I live feel completely at odds most days. Sometimes I wish I could split into two people like Jekyll and Hyde. One to continue living my structured, boring life, and another to actually experience the world. I'm married, but I sometimes feel like monogamy makes people more miserable than happy. I have kids, yet I think the world is overpopulated and question why I brought more people into it. I hate parenting, but I'm the one making all the rules and enforcing them. My job literally helps save lives, but I can't shake the thought that many of those lives will just drain resources, especially in an already overcrowded world. At work, I'm nice, polite, and professional, but internally I'm screaming all the time. I'm an atheist, yet I still celebrate Christian holidays because it's what's expected. I've checked every box my parents and society told me I needed to check to be successful and happy. Marriage, kids, a good job, and yet I'm miserable. Even though I know what I think doesn't align with how I live, I can't bring myself to change anything. I know it would upset people or make me seem foolish. So I keep doing the same things, following the same routine, and hoping that one day it will all magically feel meaningful and worth it. Story 28. I'm so incredibly jealous of my best friend. He's always been rich, coddled, and spoiled by his parents. He's never had any major responsibilities and has had everything handed to him while being praised as if he worked for it. Meanwhile, I feel like life stacked everything against me from the start. My dad had a stroke when I was 5, and from the age of 8 onward, I've had to take care of him, often picking him up when he fell. Both my parents were alcoholics. My mom is borderline narcissistic, diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression, yet she refuses to acknowledge her issues, constantly gaslighting me and making everything about herself. Since I was 15, I've been hopping from one she apartment to another. My best friend, on the other hand, got a luxury sports car, crashed it, and had it repaired, all paid for by his parents. I've been paying rent to my mother to stay in her house, while he argues with his mom because he spends too much of her money on food. His gas, car, and college are all paid for by his parents. His mom jokes about him living with her for the rest of her life, while my mom constantly reminds me how much of a burden I am. His parents taught him to drive, while my dad couldn't and my mom refused. He gets good jobs because his mother applies for them on his behalf. It feels pathetic to admit, but I'm so jealous of his life. He'll never know what it means to struggle. Meanwhile, I'm thankful for my girlfriend and my son. They are the bright spots in my life. But I can't help wishing I'd been as fortunate as him. Story 29. I am, without a doubt, butt ugly. Yet somehow I've managed to date insanely hot women, including my current girlfriend and a few exes. It's something I think about all the time because I'm extremely self-aware, and it honestly drives me a little crazy. Why would women like them want to be with someone like me? Nobody looks at me and thinks, yeah, I'd go out with that guy. The relationships I've had always start with me building attraction through interaction and charm. That's how the connection sparks. But in public, I get these side-eyed looks from people like they're wondering, how did he land her? Here's an example. I was standing at a bar one night and some guy was gawking at my girlfriend. He started saying things like, holy look at her. The things I'd do to her, completely unaware she was with me. I told him, watch the next thing that comes out of your mouth because that's my girl. He was shocked and responded, no way. What are you paying her per night? I was furious. He immediately backtracked, apologized, and started raving about how lucky I must be, even joking that my cock size must be the reason. Another time I was on vacation with an ex who wanted to be a singer. We ended up meeting a celebrity musician who was a big deal in her country. At one point, his entourage tried to get her to go up to his private room, subtly trying to play me in the process. She turned them down without hesitation, which made me proud. But it also left me wondering, how does someone like me inspire that kind of loyalty? It honestly baffles me. These women could have anyone, yet they choose me. I've experienced real love, and while it's amazing, it also leaves me questioning, why me? I'm grateful, but I'll never fully understand it. It's not something I ever see or hear about happening to anyone else, which makes it feel even stranger. Story 30. The love of my life, though not in a romantic sense, is a 73-year-old woman who raised me. She is my best friend, my rock, and the reason I am who I am today. She has taught me to be open and strong, to let my emotions show without letting them control me, to listen without judgment while still giving honest advice, even if it might hurt. Every day, I strive to be more like her, but she is dying slowly and it's breaking my heart. 5 years ago, she nearly died from sepsis, and I promised her I'd make the decision not to put her on machines again if it came to that. I'm her power of attorney. I know she is ready for whatever comes next, and I know she'll pass peacefully when her time comes. But I'm not ready, and I don't think I ever will be. Right now, she's in the ICU, and because of COVID restrictions, I can't even see her. I've kept all of this to myself until now, but as I write this, I realize just how heartbroken and sad I am. The realization has hit me like a ton of bricks, and I'm sitting here bawling in the ambulance. I'm an EMT. I hope she doesn't leave me yet. Story 31. My mother didn't accidentally catch fire while using an old kerosene stove to cook. That's the story everyone believes, but I know the truth. The official version goes like this. Late at night, my father came home from work, and my mother decided to use an old kerosene stove because the gas stove wasn't working. The stove exploded, and she caught fire. My father, who was in the bathroom, heard us crying and came out to save her. She passed away a month later from her injuries. The truth is much darker. I woke up that night to my father trying to save her, my sibling crying, and my mother apologizing, saying, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know it would be this bad." The kerosene stove was on the floor, perfectly fine, with its cap off. My father later told me that it was my aunt's idea for my mother to fake a suicide attempt to scare him into stopping his heavy drinking. He would drive home drunk every night, and had already been in an accident. My sibling, who had woken up during their argument, saw my mother light the match but didn't understand what was happening. At the hospital, when the police asked my father questions, my cousin, my aunt's daughter, took us kids for a walk to keep us away from the conversation. They likely feared I might say something incriminating. They didn't realize how good I was at lying. Even now, they assume I believe their story because they've repeated it so often. As a teen, I fantasized about going to the police and exposing the truth, but I never did. I didn't have the money to pursue anything, and over time, I let it go. My father was no saint. He had numerous DUI cases, a hit-and-run charge, and other run-ins with the law. My aunt's husband was a scammer who would hide at our house whenever the police were after him. My aunt, who now helps my sibling and me financially, acts like I don't know the truth. She claims she feels responsible for us, but I wonder if it's guilt. Ironically, months before my father died, it seemed he had started to believe the lie too. The entire situation feels surreal and tragic, and I'm left carrying the truth that no one wants to admit. Story 32. I've never shared this online before, but my younger brother is a cold-hearted POS. When my father passed away 3 years ago, it left my mom living alone, without any income, and with the beginnings of Alzheimer's. My siblings and I agreed to split the costs to support her, covering utilities, property taxes, home insurance, and any other expenses. We also committed to visiting daily to care for her. Thankfully, the house was paid off, but the rest of the bills still added up. My younger brother hasn't contributed a single cent. He claims he can't afford it. Yet since our father died, he's completely renovated his kitchen, converted his one-car garage into a 2-car, bought a brand new SUV, 2 project cars, and a motorcycle. On top of that, he and his wife constantly go out to eat and post about it all on Facebook. I don't care that he has those things, but it's infuriating when he cries poverty when it comes to helping his own mother. What's worse is that he only visits her once a year on Mother's Day, and even that seems more for his own self-satisfaction than for her. She hasn't seen her grandkids in 2 years. He doesn't even bring them on Mother's Day. I've confronted him about this 5 times, but he refuses to budge. This past Mother's Day, I finally told him, if you're not going to help, at least stop claiming it's because you can't afford it. Your wife constantly posts about all the things you buy. His wife responded by posting passive-aggressive Facebook updates about people who don't think they deserve nice things. And she started posting even more about all the stuff she wants to buy. It's been very tempting to blast the whole situation publicly, but I'm not the kind of person to stir up drama. So that's my secret. Putting this out in public wouldn't help anyone. It would only create more stress for everyone involved. My older brother and sister know all about it, but no one else does. I refuse to spill the beans on his heartlessness because, at the end of the day, I have to live with myself. Story 33. So it was my 16th birthday party. My stepmom, who's an alcoholic and just an all-around awful person, got completely wasted at the party. For some reason, she was pissed off, though I still can't figure out why. She started screaming at some of the girls who were there, then came over to me and continued her tirade. Before I go into the juicy part, let me set the stage. The week leading up to my birthday, my dad was on a trip somewhere. I don't even know where. While he was gone, she made my life miserable. She bossed me around, made me do a ton of chores, which, okay, chores or whatever, gave me a curfew, and kicked out any girl who came to the house. Now back to the party. She was screaming in my face, and I managed to make out one line through her slurred words. "I'm only here for your dad's money. You're just a stupid idiot I couldn't care any less about." That was the last straw. I let her rant for a few more seconds while the entire party watched, but then I slapped her across the face. It was clean, and it shut her up instantly. She started crying, and I locked her in her room so she could pass out and stop embarrassing everyone. To this day, she ignores me, and my dad still has no idea what happened. The slap, though? It went down in Bois history as a legendary moment at school. Story 34. This might not be as serious as some other stories here, but it's my personal secret, and I feel like sharing it. It's about my type. I'm turning 18 in a few months, and I've never had even the slightest crush, let alone a boyfriend. All my friends have already had relationships or started experimenting a while ago. I thought I was just a late bloomer. Turns out that's not the case. I'm just not into masculine guys. At all. Unfortunately, I've only ever been around that type. I won't say which country I'm from, but it's a place that's, let's just say, still stuck in the Middle Ages. Here, people constantly tell me, you need to find a strong alpha male, a fearless man who can take care of you and protect you. He has to be manly, tall, built like a tank, and dominant. It's exhausting. I identify as a masculine woman myself, so I already get told to act more feminine, or people will think I'm a lesbian. What nobody knows is that my ideal type is actually feminine men. I'm terrified to tell anyone, especially my parents. They've raised me to expect the alpha male protector narrative, and I'm scared they'll be disappointed if I reveal my truth. Story 35. When I was a senior in high school, a lot of students were dealing with family deaths or chronic illnesses. My best friend was one of them. She had just lost her mom. Around the holidays, the administration came up with the idea of granting holiday wishes to uplift the students. Everyone got a slip of paper to write down their wish and what it meant to them. My best friend and I were both in choir, and there was an upcoming annual choir trip to San Francisco. We'd be performing around the city and competing against other schools. Her family wasn't well off, and with the hospital bills, funeral expenses, and everything else after her mom's passing, she couldn't afford the trip. She'd put it out of her mind, focusing instead on selling cookies and candy to help fundraise for her mom's funeral. It broke my heart to see her like that, so depressed, knowing her mom wouldn't be at her graduation, see her in her prom dress, or watch her go off to college. I knew missing the trip would only make things worse for her. So on my holiday wish sheet, I explained her situation. I wrote about how much she was struggling and how much it would mean to her to go on the trip with everyone else. After winter break, she ran up to me so excited and told me that our choir teacher had paid for her trip. Our choir teacher was part of the holiday wish team. She had no idea I'd written about her, and I've never told her. But seeing her light up like that, finally having a moment of happiness during such a tough time, meant the world to me. I don't know if I'll ever tell her, but it feels good knowing I helped bring her a little bit of joy when she needed it most. Story 36. I used to be very close with my grandpa when I was a child. He loved me the most and spoiled me so much. But as I grew older, something in me started finding him gross. Though he never did anything bad to me, I just didn't want to be near him anymore. And as he got older and more forgetful, he became a little mean at times. After my grandma passed, he moved in with us, and we mostly ignored him. It felt like he lived a lonely, purposeless life. He'd watch TV all day and try to keep himself busy by walking around or offering to help with housework. But we wouldn't let him because we were afraid he'd fall or get hurt. My siblings and I rarely spoke to him. A part of me wanted to talk to him again because I felt bad for him. But I had grown so accustomed to avoiding him that I never really tried. The most I could muster was small talk. When he passed away, he died alone in the hospital in the middle of the night. I know he must have felt very lonely and unwanted in his final years, and I regret how I treated him every single day. I wish I could go back in time and be a better granddaughter, to give him the love and attention he deserved, and make sure his final years were filled with happiness instead of loneliness. Story 37. When I was 6 or 7 years old, I had a nightmare that still haunts me at 27. I was in a stadium watching a hockey game when, all of a sudden, the players started brutally killing one another. They were slicing each other in half, stabbing with skates, and bisected bodies were crawling across the ice. Ever since that night, I've had non-stop nightmares every time I go to sleep. They're always violent, brutal, and full of gore and death. For years, I was terrified of sleeping and developed insomnia because I couldn't stay asleep. The nightmares drove me to 2 suicide attempts, one at 14 and another at 16. I've never told anyone about this because my family is already concerned about my mental health, and I don't want to make them worry even more. I've been diagnosed with PTSD from childhood trauma and major depressive disorder. To sleep at all, I have to take 3 different medications, one of which erases my dreams. While it helps, I'd give anything to dream about something happy for once. To this day, I vividly remember that first nightmare, and it messes with me that I can pinpoint the exact moment when my nightmares began. It feels like it set the tone for the rest of my life. Story 38. When I go to school, people often notice that I hug my backpack instead of putting it on the ground, and they ask me why. I usually tell them it's to keep it safe, so no one steps on it or steals anything. But the real reason goes much deeper. When I was a kid, I was abused by my dad and sometimes by my grandpa. I remember my dad whipping me with his belt just because I slept too long. I remember him grabbing my hair and slamming my head against the wall. My grandpa would hit my feet with belts, fly swatters, and other things until I couldn't even walk. My grandma would help me back to my bed so I could rest. And every time I get there, I would hug my stuffed monkey and cry myself to sleep. I didn't realize it then, but when my grandma, aunts, and uncles all moved in with us under one roof, the financial strain made things even worse. My mom and dad worked overtime every single day just to keep us barely above water, avoiding debt, keeping food on the table, and making sure the utilities stayed on. They were always exhausted and confused. On top of that, our religion required a lot of physical effort, which added to the stress. Eventually, my grandma, grandpa, and the others moved out, and life became easier. Over time, my dad stopped beating me, became more patient, and started thinking things through instead of forcing them. My grandpa, though still difficult, mellowed out a bit too. I think his experiences during the Vietnam War and other bloody events left him with a lot of anger. Despite everything, I'm happy he could eventually smile and laugh at how dumb we kids were. Life got better, but my habit of hugging things never went away. Even now, when I sit on a couch, I instinctively grab the nearest pillow and wrap my arms around it. Hugging something brings me comfort and safety, just like my stuffed monkey used to when I was a scared little kid. Story 39. I've been battling massive depression ever since I found out my girlfriend cheated on me nearly 5 years ago. I didn't even learn the truth until about 1.5 years ago, when I discovered that my then 3-year-old daughter wasn't biologically mine. That's how I found out she'd cheated. But I'm on the birth certificate, so legally, I'm her dad. And more importantly, I love her with all my heart. I moved out to be with her when she was only 3 months old, and she became my whole world. Leaving wasn't an option. I told my girlfriend I wouldn't tell my family about the cheating if she would just stop lying and be honest with me. I just wanted us to be a family. For a couple of months, she seemed to try, but it didn't last. Whatever the case, I still get to see my daughter, and my family doesn't treat her any differently. Now I only see my daughter on weekends, and recently she started mentioning someone named Elias and saying things like, "Mommy is sleeping with Elias." It's destroyed me. I gave everything to make this family work, even after she cheated and lied. And now, my 4-year-old is telling me that my ex is sleeping with another guy in the same room as my daughter. I have no one to talk to about this. I can't tell my family because they already suspect I'm not her biological dad. They've asked for a copy of the test results, but I refuse to share them. I can't even tell my few friends because I feel like I'm just burdening them with my drama. I live in California, and I'm terrified of taking this to court. I'm not confident a judge would label me as the father or grant me anything more than the weekends I already have. Worse, I could be removed from the birth certificate entirely and see my daughter even less. If that happened, my ex would almost certainly cut me out of her life altogether. She's already said she doesn't think dads are important in a child's life. On top of all that, I got blood work done last month because I've been feeling nauseous for weeks. Turns out one of 3 tests came back positive for HIV. I've only been with her for the past 8 years. She got tested when she had the baby 4.5 years ago and was clean. So it had to have come from someone else she cheated with. And now I'm wondering if this Elias guy has been around for longer than I realized, or if there's another guy in the picture entirely. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm constantly spinning wild scenarios in my head and I'm so lost. I wouldn't care if someone put a bullet in my head, but I'm too much of a coward to do it myself. I don't know what to do anymore. My entire life feels like it's spiraling out of control, and I have no way to stop it. Story 40. The reason this is a secret is because I'm a teenager, and I know that if I ever told anyone, I'd just be labeled the edgy kid. The thing is, I don't fully remember what happiness feels like. Yes, I know how it sounds, but hear me out. I have 2 nice families. My parents are divorced but share custody. I have a good life, great friends, and an okay school. I have the privilege of owning a computer, which I use for school, drawing, and animating, even though it's slow at rendering things. I also have a phone and a PS4 that I got for my birthday in 2014. I'm not being bullied, and I once helped a friend out of depression, which is still my proudest achievement. There's no reason for me not to be happy. I should be happy, but I'm not. I wake up every day and immediately try to fall back asleep because being awake doesn't feel good. I don't know if this is depression or just typical teenage angst, but I hope it gets better someday. Maybe it's connected to my breakup with my ex. She was really toxic to me and others. For example, there was a girl 2 years younger than me who liked me and confessed over Instagram. I told her I couldn't date her because I was still with my girlfriend at the time, but my ex had other plans. She decided we should bully this girl, and I went along with it. I've never been more ashamed of anything in my life. Even after that, I stayed with her for another month because I was a dumbass. Since that breakup, I've felt this way. I like to believe I don't care, but deep down I do. Our breakup brought a lot of unnecessary drama, and I hate drama. Honestly, the only things keeping me from slipping further are anime, video games with my friends, YouTube, especially animation and gaming comedy creators like Scott the Woz and Nakey Jakey, and my dream of working in a game studio one day. Today is my dad's birthday, and I want to be better for him. I want to give him my happiest side, even if it's forced. If you read all of this, congratulations, because even I can't stand my own nonsense sometimes. Story 41. Even though I have 3 amazing best friends, a sweet and thoughtful girlfriend, lots of friends, and people who love and support me unconditionally, I still don't enjoy living much. They're the only reason I'm still here. As much as I need them, they need me too. I've always been there for anyone who needed me. It's exhausting, but it's worth it every time. I've done great things and helped so many people, but I still hate myself more than anything. I can't stop the negative thoughts from running through my head, and sometimes they're overwhelming. But I don't want to tell anyone because I don't want them to worry. Everyone has their own problems, their own lives. I don't want to waste their time with my feelings when it wouldn't lead to anything anyway. I feel like my role is to support others, to offer a helping hand, but not to let anyone see that I need one too. If I had to choose the person I hate the most in this world, it would be me. And here's the part I hate the most about myself. I cheated on my girlfriend really early in our relationship. I regret it deeply and it will never happen again, but I don't plan on telling her. I don't want to lose her trust, even though I know I don't deserve it.